Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Threshold's annual meeting and celebration. An annual meeting unlike any we have ever had before. How's that for understatement? I'm sitting on the stage at venue 610, looking out onto hundreds of empty seats, which in past years were filled by hundreds of smiling staff and board members and supporters and friends who just had hors d'oeuvres and beverages of their choice, and who were all settled down to listen to a shortish speech and to congratulate the year's many award winners before heading back out for more beverages and dessert and camaraderie and good cheer. Well, tonight, everyone is probably at home, or maybe still in the office, celebrating with us virtually. Thank you for being with us, always with us. Some of you may be new to Thresholds, and many of you, and you know exactly who you are, have been with us for 30, 40, even 50 years and more. But no matter your tenure, this evening is for you. This evening is because of you. Because the victories and successes that I get to share are your victories and successes. I'm just the lucky messenger. But before we celebrate, and yes, brag just a little bit, I am going to ask you to join me in a brief moment of silence to remember and to honor those we have loved and lost, including staff members, and those very close to us, and those we have come to know after and because of their deaths, those whose names we must say and never forget, those who were taken from us way too early, from COVID, police brutality, violence, poverty, mental health and substance use challenges, lack of access to housing and primary care. Thank you. We honor all of these men, women, and yes, sadly, children, by continuing to make good trouble, necessary trouble, by becoming, by fighting with love and power, by waking up, being woke, and most important, doing the hard work over and over and over again. We have a packed agenda this evening. You will hear about our many, many accomplishments. You will meet 8 fabulous honorees and 4 fabulous Threshold staff who will introduce them and bestow the honors. Awardees who each and every day exercise love and power by putting compassion into action, by feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, caring for the community, meeting the demands of the moment, supporting our movement, and investing in systems and structural change. You will be wowed by 4 friends and heroes: Dr. Suzette McKinney, Secretary Grace Ho, Dr. Helene Gale, and Congresswoman Lauren Underwood. Leaders, one and all, who will have a frank and authentic discussion about what else? Well, leadership in the time of crisis and beyond. But one bit of important business before we move on. Last week, the officers and the members of the Threshold's Board of Directors for 2021 were elected, and what a stellar group it is. Our incoming chair is Dr. Suzette McKinney, CEO of the Illinois Medical District, who you will meet later as the moderator of the panel discussion. Our vice chair, Dr. Ven Mothker, co-founder and principal at Revenir Health. Our secretary, Dr. Inger Burnett-Ziegler, clinical psychologist and assistant professor at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. Our assistant secretary, Scarlett Lever Ortiz, a director at the Chicago Housing Authority. Our treasurer, Bob Spencer, retired CFO of Baker McKenzie, and basically a full-time Thresholds volunteer. Thank you, Bob. And Leo Lanzillo, our assistant treasurer, the CFO of the Northridge Group. We are so, so lucky to have these officers and 30 other fabulous men and women who will lead us through 2021 and beyond. Welcome to each and every one of you. We are so grateful for your time, your talent, and your treasure that you have brought and will continue to bring to Thresholds and those we serve. You are true servant leaders, and I love you. I also want to express my love and gratitude for Dan Claff, who has served as board president for the last 3 years. Dan's intellect, generosity, and work ethic are second to none. He makes us all work harder, work smarter, and feel really good doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dan Claff.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for your extraordinary leadership over the past year, and the past 3 years in which I've had the privilege to be the board chair. It's been quite a journey over the past 3 years. I remember vividly sitting at a board meeting right before I became chair and talking about how I was imminently taking on the dual responsibilities of chair while having our third child. Well, my third child is about to turn 3, and I'm about to finally end my term as board chair. As with parenting, this has been an extraordinary journey. I've learned so much about myself, about leadership, and about this great organization. I can only say thank you to my wonderful board colleagues, to Mark, and most importantly, to our tremendous staff and the members they serve. I'm continually in awe of our staff. Their dedication and perseverance in very difficult times is quite literally amazing. I also leave my role with some regret. While I'm incredibly proud of what we have accomplished together, there are many goals I had that we have not yet reached. But my regret is twinned with incredible optimism and excitement. Thresholds is in a great place and will continue to do great things. I'm especially thrilled that I'll be handing over the reins to Dr. Suzette McKinney. Suzette's longstanding connections, starting with working at Threshold years ago, along with her incredible skill set, make her the right leader for Thresholds at this time. Thank you in advance to Suzette. I can promise you this will be one of the most rewarding experiences of your life. Best of luck to you and the team. And thank you to our generous supporters of all types. We need each of you every day to make Thresholds work. Back to Mark for the rest of an always exciting annual meeting program.
Thank you, Dan, for everything. If I had to sum up this year in just 3 words, the 3 words would be, we show up. We show up. That's it. Yes, I stole that phrase from our very own Nikki Grigalunas of the Homeless Outreach Program, who used that line, now famous in Threshold's lure, in an interview she did with the New York Times earlier this year, right after COVID struck Chicago and the world hard. Thank you, Nikki, and everyone for showing up. This year, everyone at Threshold showed up, because that's who we are, and that's what we do. For 60 years, that is what our board and our staff and our supporters and members have done without fail. So of course, we would do nothing less, and in fact do a hell of a lot more, when the going, which has always been tough, got even tougher. So here are just a few of the things that we've done during the worst public health crisis in 100 years. During this time of ongoing social unrest, necessary unrest to protest and confront 400 years of systemic and structural racism and anti-Black oppression, and the worst economic downturn and unemployment crisis in decades. But this is what we've done. Our psychiatrists, outreach workers, and primary care partners pivoted to telehealth on a dime, ensuring that thousands and thousands of members and clients were connected to care. Our housing department that oversees scores of residences serving thousands of people, from group homes to buildings like Austin and Grace Apartments, to scattered site units all over Chicagoland. They created guidelines and safety protocols that basically stopped COVID-19 in its tracks. Our facilities department cleaned and cleaned and then cleaned some more. They installed thermometers almost everywhere, developed detailed site safety plans, and installed hundreds of sneeze guards and more. IT, they never missed a beat, buying and setting up laptops for remote and work from home use, creating Zoom accounts and more Zoom accounts, increasing our bandwidth, and being available to us, all of us, 24/7. Our talent team created new policies in record time, responded to thousands of employee requests for assistance with benefits, continued to hire and onboard, and supported all 1,200 of us with confidence and compassion. Our workforce development team created virtual consults, virtual new staff orientation, weekly newsletters, trauma groups, listening sessions, trainings on self-care, anti-racism, and more. Finance and administration, they kept our contracts in compliance, billed and collected millions, and kept our paychecks coming. The Continuity of Operations Committee, comprised of clinical and administrative leads throughout the organization and led by our incomparable COO, Mark Furlong, has met every week, now every 2 weeks, since March, to ensure that we are all on the same page and solving complex problems together. Our youth and young adult program flourished. Our high school grew. We received a 3-year federal grant to enhance career and occupational readiness. We created community and young adult advisory boards, and our MindStrong early intervention program began serving youth as young as 12 and 13 years old for the very first time. We raised a record $8.8 million in private donations. At the risk of repeating myself, we raised almost $8.8 million thanks to our fabulous staff and board, generous individual donors, and our corporate and foundation partners, including the Chicago Community Trust, United Way, McCormick, Michael Reese, Boeing, Polk Brothers, and so many more. The first of its kind legislation in this country, which requires commercial insurance to cover ACT and CST services for youth, which we have championed for years, goes into effect on January 1st. Our media and PR reached more people than ever before, and we appeared in the New York Times. Thank you, Nikki. And Crain's Chicago, wow, they showed us some love as well. Our homeless outreach program was recognized as a healthcare hero. Our general counsel, Bruce Jefferson, was named a notable general counsel of the year. Longtime Thresholds board member and our very first housing developer on staff 30 years ago, Janet Cohen-Barbet, was named a notable woman-in-law. And Emily Moen, our VP of Marketing PR, was just 2 weeks ago named a Crain's Notable PR Professional. And it's only October, folks. We exceeded our Williams and Colbert transition targets, supporting now nearly 1,400 men and women with serious mental illnesses living in the community and no longer confined to nursing homes. We started up face-to-face visits, slowly and safely, in the community to ensure that our most vulnerable members had the support and the connections they so desperately need and deserve. Our art walk went virtual and was a huge success. I hope you all bought lots of art. We benefited from a Thresholds branded coffee fundraiser. Thank you, Kankakee. Our research department brought in over $1 million in grants this year, and they have 7 active studies going on with 7 universities across the country. And our very own National Health Literacy Center is rocking and rolling. Our housing outreach program started providing housing and mental health referrals at Harold Washington Library in the Loop this summer. We opened our first living room, an alternative to hospital emergency rooms for those experiencing psychiatric emergencies. Thank you, the Illinois Department of Mental Health, and our very own Lena Raimundo. Our substance use treatment program expanded its path-breaking arrest deflection work from the West Side to the entire city of Chicago. And they are also providing strong leadership on the West Side Opioid Task Force. We received critical funding from the city of Chicago to pilot a mental health co-responder project with the Chicago Police Department, and funding from the Chicago Department of Public Health to enhance our ACT efforts on the South and the West Sides. We expanded the Cultural Humility Committee in both participants and in purpose. We created and launched Activate Thresholds to make our collective voice on all things public policy and racial justice even louder and clearer and more impactful. We created new positions and promoted 2 longtime Thresholds leaders to lead us even greater. Kim Maley is our new SVP of Talent Management, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And Nisha Brashears is our new Director of Workforce Development, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Thanks to the Illinois General Assembly, the governor, and the Illinois Department of Human Services, we received a critical one-time state grant this fiscal year, which is helping us not just to survive, but to thrive. And I have no words besides thank you, thank you, thank you. We did all of this and so much more in the most challenging of times. Can you believe it? I can't believe it some days. But then again, of course I can. Why? Because this is who we are. We show up. We show up. That's it. But friends, I also have to say this. We are hurting. Our members are hurting. They are missing the in-person connections with our staff and each other. They are missing the drop-in centers. They are missing their jobs and the many forms of social interaction and community connection that are key to their recovery. Our staff are hurting. We miss being with each other and with our members. We are mourning the loss of life due to COVID and police brutality and violence and addiction. We are struggling with unemployed partners, elderly and at-risk parents, children in remote, basically homeschool. Our city is hurting. Our state is hurting. Our country is hurting. The world is hurting. We are living in what Ibram X. Kendi calls a time of abuse. Distress and anger and worry and pain and fatigue are off the charts. Anxiety and depression are rising. Youth and young adults are experiencing suicidal ideation higher than ever before. Young Black people are dying by suicide in record numbers. And we are losing more people than ever, especially our Black brothers and sisters, to opioid and other drug overdoses, alcoholism, and violence. Many of us, but certainly not all of us at Thresholds, are privileged. I certainly am. Our board and supporters are too, generally. And Thresholds as an organization, yes, this organization is privileged. As Isabel Wilkerson, the author of The Warmth of Other Suns and most recently Cast, perhaps the most moving and important book of my life, says so pointedly and prophetically, the price of privilege is the moral duty to act when one sees another person treated unfairly. She goes on to say that we could choose not to look at our own peril. The owner of an old house knows that whatever you are ignoring will not go away. Whatever is lurking will fester, whether you choose to look at it or not. Ignorance is no protection from the consequence of inaction. Whatever you are wishing away will gnaw at you until you gather the courage to face what you would rather not see. At Thresholds, we will not look away. We never have. But we will have to look more intently, listen more carefully, and learn more quickly. And act with a fierce sense of urgency, leading where appropriate, and being the best ally and accomplice to Black and brown leaders and organizations that we can possibly be. This means being individually and organizationally anti-racist, as Dr. Kendi demands, requiring self-awareness, constant self-criticism, and regular self-examination, holding ourselves and each other accountable. And we will not settle for the world as it is, but we will put in the hard work for the world as it should be, as Barack Obama has implored us to do. And this hard work for me, as another famous Obama, Michelle, says, is about becoming. It's about forward motion. It's a means of evolving, a way to continuously reach toward a better self. The journey doesn't end when we achieve one milestone or attain one goal. The journey propels us to the next journey. And what is this immediate next journey? Well, we are gearing up for our next 3-year accreditation, our CARF virtual site visit, which we know Carrie and Virginia and all will rock. And we are hard at work on our next strategic plan. This will be big, and it will be bold, and it will be game-changing. We will strengthen our core, as any good workout instructor would demand, making sure that our outreach and housing and employment programs are forever best in class. We will double down on our substance use treatment programs with a focus on deflection and diversion. We will build on our path-breaking youth and young adult programs. We will be a leader in integrated health homes and population health management, working to make the triple aim of healthcare a reality and not just another health policy pipe dream. And we will center all of our work in and for racial justice and make sure that our internal operations and our external public policy goals demonstrate marked improvement in racial and ethnic diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we will be the leader and a great partner in all things mental health and behavioral health policy. And we will invest in our operations and infrastructure and back office, the backbone of any great organization, so that we can fully support the folks on the front line to serve our members and help them achieve recovery. I am so excited about being on this journey with you. And I leave you with these words, which I often do, by my muse, Mary Chapin Carpenter. In this world, there's a whole lot of trouble. In this world, there's a whole lot of pain. In this world, there's a whole lot of trouble, but a whole lot of ground to gain. Why take when you could be giving? Why watch as the world goes by? It's a hard enough life to be living. Why walk when you can fly? So let's soar together. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, on to our honorees. And introducing our first set, my colleague and teacher and great pal, Chief Clinical Officer Debbie Paddock.
Hello, everyone. Thresholds is recognizing Dr. Arwady, the City of Chicago Commissioner of the Department of Public Health, and Matt Richards, the Deputy Commissioner of Behavioral Health. The City of Chicago has been a long-standing partner with Thresholds, beginning with funding in the 80s to support our first foray into community support or outreach for those with serious mental illnesses experiencing homelessness. This great partnership continues, and today we are here to recognize the Chicago Department of Public Health for their literally life-saving donations of personal protective equipment, or PPE. In March, we did not have access to PPE despite our need during the COVID pandemic to remain essential to our clients. The city came through for us consistently over the last 5 months, and because of them, we made it through the initial crisis with the right equipment. We are also grateful for the new funds that help us cover the startup costs of increasing our capacity to serve new clients on the west and south sides of Chicago that ensure equity for mental health services across the city in the fight against the other pandemic, that of racism. Thank you, Dr. Arwady and Matt.
On behalf of the Chicago Department of Public Health, I'm really honored to accept this award. I want to thank Thresholds for the amazing work that you do and all of the partners do. During the time of COVID, we have worked very hard to try to keep mental health front and center. It was a priority of the mayor's when she came into office. It's been a priority here at the health department, and I'm confident that even through everything the city's been going through, if we keep working together, we are going to emerge with a stronger mental health system for everyone.
And as Dr. already said, I want to thank Thresholds for the incredible work that you all do. I think during COVID, just to see the heroic work that you have done serving some of our city's most vulnerable residents through your assertive community treatment programs, your milieu programs, your residential programs, I think it's been incredibly inspiring. but not surprising for those of us that know Thresholds and know the team. I also wanted to express my gratitude and thanks for how generous Threshold's leadership team is and your staff are with sharing their expertise, always willing to be a part of community planning, engaging us and sharing their best thinking. And that's been true over the last year. And we're just feel very grateful to have Thresholds in Chicago, to have them as a partner and to be always able to count on them to really help us through thinking how to best serve our residents. So very appreciative of this honor and excited to get to work with Thresholds in the coming year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Speaking of PPE, or personal protective equipment, we would like to extend gratitude to Jason Grebash, our Senior Director of Intake and Access, and the team of folks, which I'm going to name them each one by one: Eleanor, Cynthia, Allie, Amy, Benny, Darnell, Delilah, Hillary, Justin, Kevin, Lauren, and Teresa. All these folks worked under Jason's leadership to help create an internal inventory, request, and distribution system so that our programs and housing in Cook, Lake, McHenry, and Kankakee counties, 70 sites in all, had the masks, sanitizer, gloves, etc., that were needed to protect both our staff and our clients. Not an easy feat for an agency of our size. However, these folks made it happen and have ensured that we are safe as we continue our work despite COVID. Thank you, Jason, and everyone.
Hello, my name is Jason Grebash, and I am the Senior Director of Access and Implementation here at Thresholds. I've been at the agency for 13 years, and I've been working in nonprofit mental health for about 20. So as Debbie indicated, there are many, many people involved in the supply, in the distribution, in the delivery of PPE here at Thresholds. I graciously accept this award of one of many who were able to make this happen. And so when the pandemic struck, Thresholds, much like most of the world, was unprepared in terms of being able to obtain the PPE they needed to keep clients and also to keep staff safe. And it was amazing to me how friends and patron and family of Thresholds immediately sprung into action to be able to help us with this need. So that meant individuals were making cloth masks and getting those to us. It was individuals who were calling and emailing us, and they had a number of boxes of gloves, or they had hand sanitizer, or maybe they even had N95 masks. And myself and my staff would go out in the community, grab this PPE, bring it back, inventory it, and distribute it to our staff and to our clients to keep them as safe as possible. And so it all started very small, but then grew due to a number of private donations, specifically from the city of Chicago. Thank you, Lori Lightfoot, and also from a number of private donors. And so we were able to build up our stock to where we're able to get staff and clients PPE on a weekly basis in terms of whatever they need. And so that being said, I think we have filled about 400 orders, and it is highly likely we will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. So just in closing, I want to say thank you for this award. I do truly appreciate it. But I also want everyone to know that this was not a singular effort, and this was an effort by many, many people here at Thresholds to be able to keep our staff and our clients safe. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great evening.
Our next award is for Deborah Howard Fry, a senior VP and 35-year employee of Thresholds. Yes, this is her 35th anniversary. Congratulations, Deborah. Deborah, I have known you for all 35 of those years, and Thresholds sure got lucky when you joined us all those years ago as an outreach worker in our program on the West Side. And we remain fortunate to have you as a senior agency leader in clinical operations now. Today, Deborah is receiving recognition for the Student Intern Program, or SIP. Thresholds, like many other behavioral health organizations across the country, has been impacted by increased employee turnover. After learning of an intern program at an agency in California, Deborah borrowed the idea and created an organized effort that upped our game in bringing on college interns. With these interns, not only are we bringing more services to our clients, but we are training the workforce of the future, Threshold's future. When the SIP began, we had 29 students, and after it got rolling, we increased that to 58 students the following year. Moreover, 10 of those interns were hired at Thresholds at the completion of their internships. Thank you, Deborah.
Hello, everyone. Debbie, thank you for such a great introduction. I must say I am honored to receive this award. The fact that this award is presented to me by someone I respect and admire is an added bonus. A phrase I use often and believe in is, "It takes a village." I would like to acknowledge my village. Carrie Mastoris for bringing the student intern ideal to Thresholds. Debbie Pavick for having the vision that something like this could be successful and having the confidence in me to make it happen. Nancy Little, thanks for helping in the early stages. Lastly, program directors. Program directors give so much of their time to ensure our interns receive quality supervision while receiving exceptional experiences. Having the opportunity to build such a successful program has been an honor. The student internship has many benefits. It allows Thresholds to display staff talents in the great work we do here every day. It offers invaluable experiences for interns. It gives us an opportunity to look out for future talent. It allows fresh ideas brought in by interns. It gives the ability to test drive new talent, and it's a great opportunity to hire new staff. Thresholds has always done remarkable work, so it's very easy for any one of us to be a representative of this prestigious award. While we can't celebrate as we have in the past, I know this is a moment when we all want nothing more than to return to normalcy, but we know that the status quo is no longer acceptable. Right now, there is a pain deeply etched in the soul of our nation and in the hearts of millions. To stand together, we must stand up, recognize the fear and the hurt. In the words of Martin Luther King, today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideals, to remain watchful for possible dangers and difficulties, and to face all our challenges. With vengeance, let's stay awake, arming ourselves against the face and the faceless, the seen and the unseen of COVID-19, racial injustice, and institutional racism. I am committed to the growth inside Thresholds and look for advocates and sponsors who believe in a better Thresholds in a better America. Thank you again for this award. I hope my presence has added value to Thresholds as I proudly dedicate this award to my parents, Leo and Joanne Howard. Thank you.
I am often reminded of how small the world is. For example, my first break into the nonprofit sector was with Lakeview Pantry as a part-time development assistant. After a decade of working with toxic tort and medical malpractice attorneys, this was heaven. I had spent the last 2 years working on my master's degree in nonprofit management with a focus in development, and this was an amazing opportunity to finally get into my dream industry. Working at Lakeview Pantry provided me with the foundational experience I needed. Unfortunately, my time there was cut short because Thresholds swooped in and made me an offer I could not refuse. A fantastic opportunity to work with both Dr. Weinstein and Mark Furlong. And here I am, 5 years later, honoring the organization that gave me my first shot. After working with Lakeview Pantry again, it was like I never left. Their food delivery program provided 6,600 meals for 161 clients over the course of 9 weeks. Receiving these meals during these uncertain times brought a bit of normalcy and hope to our clients and staff, who are very grateful for this awesome resource. They allow Thresholds to continue pursuing its mission and commitment to our clients during a global pandemic. I am honored to present this award to Lakeview Pantry.
Thank you to Mark, DeAnna, and the entire Thresholds organization for honoring us in this work. We were thrilled to partner with you, and we continue to be inspired by your team's grit and commitment to making sure all of your members had the food they needed to shelter in place during the COVID quarantine. When COVID-19 hit, we saw over a 400% increase in need. We also saw so many partners like the Lavin Family Foundation thinking of creative ways to get food to the people who needed it most. So whether it was working with the Feed It Forward program to deliver restaurant meals to Thresholds buildings, or working with one of your team coming to our locations, including our temporary location at Wrigley Field, to pick up food for one of your members, we loved working with you, and we were honored to be a small piece of the puzzle. We look forward to our continued partnership and making sure all people have the food that they need to stay nourished and healthy through these difficult times.
Just going along with what Kelly said, I was so fortunate to work alongside Threshold's incredible staff and see the drive and commitment they have to serving their community.
Combating food insecurity in Chicago is a cause that is very important to me. It doesn't just impact people who are homeless, it affects children, veterans, people with disabilities, and the working poor. In fact, 1 in 7 people in Chicago will experience food insecurity this year. When the state locked down in March, we as an agency were left with limited resources to support our clients. Thresholds was very fortunate to receive a grant from the Lavin Family Foundation, providing over 2,600 meals for 145 clients over 12 weeks. This grant not only provided our clients living on the South and West Sides with meals 2 times per week, but it also allowed the agency to support local restaurants who were hit the hardest during this time. The South and West Sides are often left out of key resources. It was very humbling to work with a funder that understood the extreme circumstances those communities were facing and stepped in and provided a life-saving solution. Thresholds is extremely grateful to have received this grant from the Lavin Family Foundation, and I am honored to present them with this award.
Thank you, DeAnna, for your kind introduction, and to the many Threshold board and staff for your work to help so many people fighting mental illness and substance abuse issues. Of course, now your efforts are needed more than ever. On behalf of my family, please know that we are humbled by this acknowledgement. Our giving stems from the lessons and values my mom and dad gave to me, which I've worked very hard to instill in my kids. The incredible value of hard work, the responsibility to care for others less fortunate, and the importance of supporting and strengthening our neighborhoods and our wonderful city. Alberto Culver, the beauty and consumer goods business that my parents founded, and we together grew into a $4 billion business, competed against companies like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, L'Oreal, companies 15 times our size. We had to innovate to compete, and frankly, we had to stretch every single dollar. And we carried that spirit into our philanthropy. It became ingrained in us to look for ways in which to triple the productivity of every single dollar. We do that with Enchanted Backpack, and we do that with Cece's Wishlist, charities we founded, literally making quarters act like dollars. The idea for Feed It Forward came from that very mindset. We saw so many people dealing with food insecurity as the COVID-19 shutdowns began, while at the same time hearing of so many restaurant owners struggling with how to stay afloat, trying to keep their employees involved. By supporting nonprofits like Thresholds and Lakeview Pantry and having you partner with neighborhood restaurants, it became a win-win. Nonprofits could care for their clients, over 130 restaurants and their employees were kept busy, and over 300,000 meals were served to those who were hungry. We gave food, and maybe more importantly, we gave hope. Most of all, I love empowering the incredibly great people who work for nonprofits. You all make such a wonderful difference in people's lives. And how much fun is it to be able to walk across the street to your local taco stand or hamburger stand and say, we can save you. We need meals for the next 2 months. We're happy that through programs like Feed It Forward and Cece's Wishlist, which is one where we donate brand new clothing, shoes, underwear, PJs,
sheets, towels, and more to area nonprofits, absolutely no strings attached. We can support Threshold's excellent work and your community outreach. Thank you for your recognition of my family and the Lavin Family Foundation. The gift is to the giver, and you have touched us most deeply. Thank you.
It is my pleasure to present this award to the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Rush Medical College, which is my alma mater. The award is to recognize the department's ongoing commitment to our substance use treatment program. Dr. Gail Bosch and Ruchi Fitzgerald are accepting on behalf of the department. Dr. Bosch is an associate professor and the program director of the Addiction Medicine Fellowship. She is instrumental in educating physicians in addiction medicine who then become providers in our service area. It is under her leadership that addiction fellows work and train at Thresholds. Dr. Bosch has dedicated her professional life to working with individuals who have a substance use disorder, and she is active in the medical organizations which advocate for the highest standards of care in addiction medicine. Dr. Fitzgerald is a family medicine physician. Over the past year, she provided excellent care as a fellow in addiction medicine, working with Thresholds members in the substance use treatment program. Since the start of the pandemic, she remained dedicated to keeping her clients engaged, which we deeply appreciate. In October, Dr. Fitzgerald will be the service chief of the new Addiction Medicine Consult Service at PCC Community Wellness on the West Side. We are thrilled Dr. Fitzgerald will remain in the local community. Thank you and congratulations to the entire Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Rush Medical College.
My name is Ruchi Fitzgerald. I'm a family physician and I am Rush's second addiction medicine fellow. I'm the first fellow to have the opportunity to rotate at Thresholds during my fellowship. This rotation has meant so much to me. Working on the West Side with the Thresholds team has afforded me the opportunity to really learn about community addiction medicine and working within a team that really partners with the members that they serve. I have learned so many skills that I will take with me in my career as a family doctor who specializes in addiction medicine. The members of the Threshold team, as well as the patients that they serve, are truly amazing individuals. We meet people right where they're at on the West Side, and Rush's partnership with Thresholds is truly remarkable. Thank you so much for this opportunity as an addiction medicine fellow to be a part of such an incredible partnership.
It's our pleasure to partner with Thresholds and honor the true heroes of the West Side of Chicago, those who struggle with substance use and mental illness and work toward a better quality of life. As Dr. Ruchi Fitzgerald completes her year-long training, I'm reflecting on our weekly conversations and recalling that she tells me that Thresholds is the favorite day of her week, and indeed the Thresholds experience is one of the most important in her trainingship year. As a program director, I can think of no greater endorsement of the specialness of the Thresholds organization, and we thank you for allowing us to share and learn and listen and treat.
Hi, this is normally the time we get together, break bread, listen to Mark share highlights of the past year, and rally us towards greater achievements. Obviously, we can't celebrate together the way we want to, but even COVID can't keep us from recognizing those who have been partners in our journey over the past year. I have the privilege and honor of presenting Threshold's Hero Award to Howard Brown Health. Our relationship began with the shared vision of providing quality integrated care to Threshold's clients. This experiment in care has been somewhat of a living laboratory where flexibility and innovation have been cornerstones. With the arrival of COVID and recent civil unrest, our ability to be flexible and innovative was tested again. The result was Howard Brown Mobile Shot Clinic and a re-engineering of the way we deliver care. With Howard Brown psych providers going door to door in the mobile van, telehealth appointments, and limited in-office visits, HBH was able to mitigate the harm that these dual pandemics presented and provided a bridge for continuity of care. Thank you, Howard Brown and the 47th Street leadership, Maya, Mateo, and Laura. It may seem as though Howard Brown Health is the winner tonight, but the true winners are Threshold staff and clients. I am proud to have Howard Brown as a partner on 47th Street and to present them with this award.
Hey, this is Laura Craig from Howard Brown. Just want to say thank you so much for this award. We really appreciate Threshold's collaboration, and we literally could not have done the mobile unit without you guys, so thank you so much. We did want to show you a little bit about the van and mobile unit. This is what it looks like. So we have a van here. This is where members will kind of come up here, sit in this chair here. This is where we drive the van. And then this is the medical part. So, and I also just wanted to acknowledge our entire team because this was such a team effort. There's literally no way we could have done any of this without every single member of our team. Our team has been really excellent in sustaining this project. It was a lot easier to initiate it than it was to sustain it. And so the team has been really excellent in that. And so, and that includes every partner at Thresholds too. And the members have been really great. So thank you, and we appreciate you.
Hello all. One of the things I'm most proud of is that our site is truly benefit rich. We have 3 levels of care. We run groups. We have optometry, dental, open art studio, therapy with Adler, plus with our integrated care from Howard Brown, we have psychiatric and primary health care. The missing element was nutrition, but then came our partnership with Urban Growers Collective and their mobile market. Thanks to Threshold's very own Sheila O'Neill, who introduced and nurtured this partnership, it grew into a weekly visit from the collective. This helped enhance our goals of supporting food security and challenge staff to become more creative in discussions with our clients around meal planning. Not only did it supply options in food deserts, but it allowed rare meal prep opportunities for Southside clients, as well as staff and residents in the community. This partnership has allowed us the opportunity to examine the inroads that can be made in nutrition and health through education and access to quality food. And while the presence of the pandemic may have stalled deployment of the mobile market and halted cooking demonstrations, the collective saw and met a need to donate food during the early stages of COVID and the city's recent civil unrest. This is only the beginning of our partnership, and I am excited, truly excited, to see what comes next. As we celebrate the achievements of the past year, let's applaud the critical support of Urban Growers Collective.
Good evening, everybody. On behalf of Urban Growers Collective, we are so honored and humbled to be recognized by Thresholds. We are an organization that's rooted in growing food. We do this by cultivating nourishing environments which support health, economic development, healing, and creativity through urban agriculture and food systems. And clearly, this is something that has connected us deeply with Thresholds. The Fresh Moves model, which is the program that we primarily work with Thresholds on, allows us to really just literally pop up in communities and bring fresh, healthy produce from our farms, other local farmers that we are incubating and who are within our network and our collective, and produce wholesalers, utilizing the food system as a whole to bring the highest quality meals to our partners. We're a collective, not just in name, but in practice, being able to bring our resources and expand our capacity to deepen our mission by being able to bring healing foods to our folks who are most in need of nutritionally dense and healthy foods. It's our passion and is made possible through partners like you all, Thresholds. We are not creating a beloved community, we are a beloved community, beginning to spread our wings to support one another. And we look forward to the ongoing amazing work that Thresholds does in the community and being a partner. So thank you.
And congratulations to all the award winners this evening. You are absolute rock stars. And for the final portion of the evening, we have a fabulous panel discussion for you, moderated by our new board chair, Dr. Suzette McKinney. Suzette, take it away.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you this evening and to have the opportunity to moderate this panel with such an incredible group of women leaders. This is my first task as the incoming president of the Thresholds board, And I'd like to not only thank you all for being here with us this evening, but I'd like to especially thank our fearless leader, Mark Ishaw, for his vision in putting this panel together. So ladies, if you guys are ready, why don't we go ahead and get started? Because we have a lot to talk about tonight. One of the things that has been very obvious to me is the importance of compassionate and well-informed leadership, particularly in government during times of crisis. So Grace, I wonder if you'd like to start with just giving us your thoughts about the importance of governmental leadership during crisis and how critical that can be to outcomes that we see.
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. I think there's no starker example of where government leadership can fail or can succeed and achieve for residents of our state or our country than our response to COVID-19. I mean, a lot can be said about the federal response, and I'm not really going to go into that territory, but I have to say that the response in Illinois under the leadership of Governor Pritzker has been not only strong, swift, bold, but also deeply compassionate. You know, I think if you think about our human services system, it is comprised of not only state staff, but it is also comprised of the nonprofit sector that is very vibrant in Illinois and actually was just coming off of the heels of many years of erosion and disinvestment under the previous administration with no budget for several years. We were just starting to bounce back and build a strong nonprofit foundation. And so when we recognized very quickly that even as services had to shut down completely or shut down partially or shut down virtually, that we had to make an investment to make sure that we could retain these services, because we knew once the doors started opening and once individuals started going back out into community, human services was going to be more and even more relevant than ever, with increasing rates of poverty as a result of unemployment associated with the pandemic. Human services needed to be at the front line. And in fact, with our brothers and sisters on the front line with public health, hospitals, first responders, a lot of our human service providers continue to work through the pandemic. And so because of the swiftness, the boldness to action, and the compassion, I think DHS was able to continue to power its human services system. So now that we begin to see the impact, the human impact of COVID-19, the human services system is in fact intact in order for services to be delivered. You know, one of the things that I think leadership is about hard decisions. You know, that is when leadership is called to its greatest challenges, when people don't agree on how to move forward. But because our administration is driven by science and data and the welfare of our residents, all of our residents, and the future, you know, those are where the decisions actually become pretty crystal clear, even if it's not so clear for the rest of the residents. So I'm proud of what we've done in Illinois. I'm proud to be a part of the governor's administration, and I think the numbers show, right, what Illinois has been able to do during the pandemic.
Thank you for that, Grace. I would say that no truer words have been spoken. I had the privilege of working alongside the state of Illinois on its COVID response, and I even worked alongside some of your team members on the homelessness interagency task force. And it was so refreshing to see the words that you speak about in terms of compassionate government at play in the work that I did with some of your team members. So Helene, we mentioned that COVID-19 certainly impacted some communities more so than others. Give us your thoughts on COVID's disproportionate impact on specific communities through the lens of perhaps some quick moves that the government made to help improve the status of residents in specific communities that were being disproportionately impacted by COVID?
Yeah, and so I will say, answer that somewhat in the context of the work that we have kind of prioritized at the Trust. And as you know, about a year ago, we decided that closing the racial and ethnic wealth gap would be our highest priority. And right on the heels of launching that strategy came COVID, which highlighted the disproportionate impact on people of color. And then we had George Floyd. So it was kind of a 1-2 punch, if you will, in terms of really highlighting racial inequity and the consequences of racial inequity. And, I think I really give high marks to the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, for recognizing that fact early on, that in fact, particularly Black and Latinx communities were disproportionately impacted. We know that's not a racial or ethnic characteristic. It's the social circumstances. As we say in public health, it's the social determinants of health, that, the fact that people are working in jobs that expose them more to COVID, and the fact that people have pre-existing conditions that make them more likely to have severe disease if in fact they acquire the infection. And so all of these factors that are linked to the impact that racism has and all of the consequences of racism on Black and brown communities, has really kind of came into full display in COVID. And so I think the fact that, we were one of the first states and cities to actually disaggregate data by race and ethnicity so that it was clear the impact on communities. And it just goes back to your question to Grace, how important it is to have these systems in place and have them be effective and have a coordinated response, as opposed to what we have seen at the national level. I spent 20 years with the Centers for Disease Control. It hurts me to see the fact that we don't have that kind of national leadership to be able to guide this response. And it's why, again, I feel proud to be in a state where that exists. But, we have a community trust, and our other partners in philanthropy feel very pleased to have the kind of leadership, so that when we launched our response fund to be able to raise between the city and the state $60 million to get emergency relief out to the most vulnerable communities, we had real partners to do that with. And we had a system in place that allowed us to make sure that we were targeting those resources where they could make the biggest difference. So that's, I think, as tragic as this situation is, it's an example of how the public and the private sector, nonprofit and philanthropic sectors actually work together in a way that made a difference in everyday people's lives in the midst of this awful crisis that we're facing.
Absolutely, Helene. Well, just as a follow-up, how do you think governments and the business community and the nonprofit sector should continue to move forward beyond COVID and beyond everything that we've been experiencing in a way that sustains the work that you've all worked so hard to not just launch, but really ensure that there is a significant impact on vulnerable communities? How do we keep that going beyond COVID and beyond all of the racial injustice issues that are front and center right now?
Well, I think, turning our eyes towards recovery. And, while we're not out of the crisis yet by any means, I think thinking about what is it going to take to recover, and to recover equitably. If you look at the example of the crisis of 2008, we know that communities of color didn't bounce back because there wasn't a focused effort to really make sure that as the rest of society recovered, that we were also focusing specifically on the issues of Black and brown communities and communities who went into this crisis economically vulnerable. So we're in the midst of working with our partners in philanthropy, with government, with the private sector, to actually look at could we mount a similar sort of effort where we raise dollars to really focus on the things that can bring quick economic vitality back to communities that have been the most hard hit, and working with our business partners to see what are the kinds of business practices, dollars, yes, but what are the things that businesses can do in the way that they think about their policies and practices that can also have a huge impact on economic vitality in terms of jobs, in terms of lending, all the things that are so important that the business sector can contribute to it. So we're really looking at how do we bring all those forces together to think about recovery, but with a real lens towards equity.
Sure, thank you, Helene. So I want to take a moment to pose a question to Congresswoman Underwood. Congresswoman Underwood, you are a nurse by training, and you've also had significant experience working for the Department of Health and Human Services. What are your thoughts around policies that could be enacted to improve health and improve access, particularly for those that are the most vulnerable among us?
Well, thank you, Suzette. It's so good to be with you and with Dr. Gail and Grace. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Right. This is a time of immense need when we need to be investing in our federal, state, and local public health infrastructure. And so that's why I've been so proud in the Congress to be a leading voice on issues like investing in creating a health force and a resilience force so that through COVID-19, we can have the staff across the country that are trained in public health best practices to do this contact tracing so that we can manage the public health response. But then also it creates this sustainable workforce. As you all know, our public health workforce has been really just chronically disinvested in over the last 20 years. And so, so many of our local agencies have been working at the top of their capacity so that when a natural disaster rolls in or a new infectious disease like COVID-19 comes around, it creates a real crisis because they don't have the resources within their organization to be able to effectively respond. And certainly not in a way that we see right now where it's 56 jurisdictions because the federal government has not stepped up in the way that we know that they should, right? No national plan, no strategy, and forcing jurisdictions to compete with each other for critical supplies like PPE. It's outrageous. But then the other piece of it is a healthcare piece and making sure that the American people have the affordable healthcare coverage during the pandemic and beyond. And so that's why I've been so proud in the Congress to pass legislation like our Healthcare Affordability Act, which says that no American would pay more than 8.5% of their income on premiums, which, as you know, in Illinois, it's not uncommon for people to be paying out of pocket 25% of their income just to have an insurance card in their wallet. And it's outrageous. And so there's a variety of changes that we do know are needed coming out of the Congress. And so I think that the key is going to be making sure that we have both the House and Senate that are committed to legislating to offer this kind of relief to the American people.
Absolutely. And Congresswoman, we know that you are proud to be in Congress. I have to say, as an African-American female leader, and I know that there are many others that stand alongside me when I say that we are proud to have you in Congress. But I have a question. African Americans have memories of situations that are long past that have really bred mistrust in healthcare as well as in government. So if you had the opportunity to talk to people in the community about their mistrust and about some of the failures in leadership that we've seen during this very difficult time, what would you say to them just to try and get them to be a little bit more open-minded about the very types of policies that you are working to enact in Congress and all of the work that people like Grace and Helene are doing to just make life better for all of us? What would you say to them?
So we know that this mistrust runs deep, and some of it has its legacy out of Tuskegee and some of the failed and unethical research experiments that certainly were targeted at the Black community, but then some of it's more recent. You all probably remember in the very early days of COVID-19, there were these rumors spreading on social media targeted at Black communities saying that we were inherently immune. And over the weeks, we found out that it was our foreign adversaries, the same people that tried to influence our election results. We're the ones behind these dangerous and deadly messages seeking to tell Black people that they didn't need to worry about COVID-19. And so, really being critical thinkers when it comes to evaluating the sources of healthcare information is important. But we are so fortunate that in our community, we have trusted sources. We have healthcare providers, people who come from our communities, who are embedded in our communities, community health centers and networks like Thresholds, which are so important that we can go to verify healthcare information. We have resources like national institutions like the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that airs PSAs and has tried to connect with folks, even using social media. And despite some of the inaccurate statements coming out of the White House and the Trump administration, we know that there are the leading scientists and researchers that are working hard on behalf of the American people to make sure that we get the best information. But the other thing that we have to do as policymakers is be intentional. And that's why I wrote a bill called the Community Immunity During COVID-19 Act, because we recognize, for example, that vaccines are an issue that people have been expressing severe doubt about, whether it's a COVID vaccine or otherwise. We've seen that people have really seen sharp declines in vaccination rates due to, like measles vaccines, right? Regular preventable illnesses, people are not getting their vaccines during the pandemic. And so we're trying to encourage kids, teens, and adults to resume their routine immunizations so that we don't end up with an epidemic while we're battling a pandemic. And then begin planting these seeds so that the communities, including communities of color, will trust that an eventual COVID vaccine is both safe and effective, pushing back against those messages from the anti-vaxxers and just the doubters who say that they don't want a Trump vaccine. What we would love to do is be able to take the politics out of these kinds of public health proposals, particularly as we embark on the largest mass vaccination campaign in American history. We cannot afford for there to be this systemic mistrust. And so it's really important that we each take the opportunity to reconnect with healthcare providers or local trusted voices in each of our communities if we sort of taken a step back during COVID-19.
Absolutely. We can't afford some of those same situations that we saw with H1N1, where
That's
certain
right.
communities just flat out refused to accept that vaccine. One of the things that is always apparent and front and center for me is being a woman, being a leader, but also being a woman of color and working to lead people not only through crises, but through everyday situations. And so as we continue this trend of talking about racial injustice and its impact over time, Grace, I want to go to you and get your thoughts around how do you, in times like this, and you lead a very large organization, how do you get people or groups of people to talk to each other and not past each other, recognizing that, we really need to come together as a society to work to create greater opportunity and support those among us that perhaps have not had some of the same opportunities that we've had. So just how do you do that within your organization?
That's a great question. And so one of the things that I'm proud of that we have done at the Illinois Department of Human Services is that we've built a very diverse leadership team across any sort of demographics that you could talk about. And so we pride ourselves in enabling residents, the people of Illinois, to see themselves at the Department of Human Services. And so, but the work does not stop there with diversity, as we all know. We have to build in pieces of equity and inclusion so that we can actually reap the benefits of diversity. And that's hard, and that takes investment. And I think one of the things that is the benefit of working relentlessly for several months is that you build a very intimate relationship with the people that you're working with. There were highs, there were lows, there's laughter, there's tears that we've been a part of together. And so we've built this very strong bond of trust and loyalty to each other and to the work. And that has what I think has carried us through as a leadership team, and that is critically important. And one of the things that I also value in this diversity is the ability for people who are on our leadership team to say, hey, you know what, Grace? I don't agree with you, and this is why, and that we can talk about it. The worst thing that I think a leader can do is to believe that they have all of the answers, especially in this context of COVID-19 and fighting this pandemic that we've never had to fight in our generation. I think that the other thing that we try to practice is radical honesty and authenticity. Being able to share bits and pieces of who we are, and I think, Suzette, you've tried to garner a discussion in that regard with us as well, is who are we?
Right.
You know, what is going on behind our Zoom cameras? You know, what are the things that pull on our heartstrings? Because the work that we do at Human Services is very intimate. Like, we are in the lives of helping other lives. And so if we don't tend to the relationships between us, that's where things break down. You know, sometimes I have conversations with our managers when there's friction and they say, oh, well, I'm embarrassed. In fact, just today, I'm embarrassed. We shouldn't have to be talking to the secretary about our areas of disagreement. And I said, absolutely not. That is my job. My job is to promote a spirit of being able to say, hey, we're having a tough time working this issue through. We don't agree, you know, and I want to be a part of enabling people to feel like their voices are just as important as the diversity target boxes that they check for us, and that we want those different experiences, because I do think that that's how we have a better product, and that's how we have a more compassionate and relevant human services system is if we can appreciate and understand the backgrounds, experiences, and the lives of other people.
Absolutely. And enabling people to come to work and be their authentic selves. You know, that's actually one of the things that I appreciate the most about our leader at Thresholds, Mark, because he comes to work every single day as his authentic self, and he, you know, spreads love and encourages everyone else around him to do the same. And I think that that is one of the key important things that we must do to make measurable progress. But Helene, I wonder if you could share with us, you know, one or two other important things from your perspective that you think must be done in order to make measurable progress in racial justice and equity.
Two things. One, to understand why we got to where we are. And you know, I always thought I was a relatively well-informed African-American woman, but as we have gone through our own journey of thinking about the wealth gap and racial equity, and really digging into the facts of how we got to where we are. You know, I have been amazed at learning more about the history of race and racism in this country. And I just think it is something we need to face. It is something that people need to understand, because otherwise we cast these things in terms of individual failings. And don't recognize that there were systems that were put into place that were deliberate, and that they've done what they were meant to do, which is to privilege some and, you know, disempower others. And so I think having that knowledge is important. And then I think on the, you know, with that knowledge, having some open and honest conversations so that we can all start thinking about what is, not only what is our own individual role in trying to tackle these issues, but then how do we start putting together the kinds of plans and the kinds of issues that can actually make a difference? You know, for us, we have, you know, developed a strategy that we think can make a difference in how do we look at economic power and equity here in this city and in this region. But I think for every organization, they need to ask, you know, how can we all do our part? How can we understand the issues? But then how do we all do our part from where we sit to be able to bring and heal this divide so that all of us have the opportunity to realize our full potential?
Absolutely. So I have been listening to all of you, and obviously, you know, we are here today to celebrate Thresholds and their work around mental health. And, you know, one of the things that our current situation has forced me to do is to acknowledge my own mental health. and even that of my daughter. I have a young college-age daughter, and I saw how we both struggled, but we struggled, but I always think about others that are struggling, more than me, more than us. So I would pose the same question to all of you, just around mental health. And, since we've spoken so much about government and leadership in government, I think mental health is bipartisan, and certainly non-discriminatory. Congresswoman, perhaps give us your thoughts around, just as a person, as an individual, how you have had to either confront your own mental health or talk with others around you about mental health, and perhaps some of the work that you might be doing in that area as well.
Well, thank you. We know that this is a time of trauma. It's a time of stress. It's a time of uncertainty for so many of us. And that uncertainty may be economic. It may be related to our healthcare. It may be just overall anxiety about the state of our country. And I think that acknowledging that we've been functioning in a very, very, very intense, stressful environment for about 6 months now. And so when we feel fatigued in the morning, well, guess what? We've been carrying a lot with us every day. And when, our coping skills that might have been okay for short-term stressful, engagements might not be good long-term strategies. And so checking in and evaluating those things with ourselves, I think, are important. The habits that I picked up in the very earliest days of the stay-at-home quarantine are, I've slacked off from them a little bit, right? Like my daily stretches, because my body was just not used to just sitting in one place for so long, right? And so getting back to moving every day and doing things in a physical way is something that I think is important. Making sure we're getting enough sleep, drinking water, eating fruits and vegetables. I've taken time to start journaling. And that's something that I never did before. But I found that I need to be able to process and, release some of what's going on. And that's been really beneficial to me. But I think that, the most important thing is just acknowledging that this is not normal. And it's okay if we are not okay in this highly stressful, tense, uncertain time. And then when you layer the safety concerns as a result of the violence that's going on in so many of our communities, when you layer on the healthcare concerns, when you consider that people of color are more likely to be diagnosed with COVID, have more severe illness, and then ultimately more likely to die of COVID-19. And then when you layer on the grief that I certainly feel of the news of just people in my life who have passed because of this illness, right? It's a lot. And I know that particularly other individuals coming from communities of color share that concern. And I just want them to know that, like, we hear you, we see you, we recognize that this is a challenging time, and we're trying to flood the community with resources to help.
We hear you and we see you. Such important words to share. So Grace, same question to you about mental health and the importance of mental health.
So the Illinois Department of Human Services houses the Division of Mental Health, and our charge with partners like Threshold is to care for and find recovery for people who suffer from severe and persistent mental illness. And I think in order to do that together, we need to break the stigmatized narrative that exists for people with mental illness. I think all of us individually, either ourselves or our loved ones or friends, have all confronted, right, the challenges of what mental health can do, or the lack of mental health can do to destroy a life. And so I think one of the great challenges that we need to fight towards together is to destigmatize mental illness so that we can have the robust resources that we need and the solutions to those who suffer from chronic mental illness. I would say that Threshold's the thought leadership on the front line as well as in the C-suite has been immensely important to our system of care to care for people with mental illness in Illinois. And I think there is not one person or not one institution that has the magic solution to solving the issues related to mental illness, but our administration and working with community leaders like yours is the key to the future.
So Grace, as I mentioned in the beginning, the audience tonight are not only Threshold staff, but also Threshold's board members and donors. And so one of the aspects of the Threshold's mission is hope. So I want to ask you if you can look directly into your camera and share with our staff, board, and donors words of hope, any pearls of wisdom that you are willing to share today to motivate them to keep going with hope for progress.
And so in terms of what gives me hope is the leadership of Threshold, the board, the staff. I had the opportunity to meet one of the street outreach workers who is a member of the Threshold team, who took time to stop me during a rally to protest and to raise awareness around the dramatic increase in overdose deaths over the past several months, to say, we want to work with you and we want to figure out how we can solve this problem. Why are more Black Chicagoans dying of overdose deaths than anybody else? How do we solve this together? And so that's what gives me hope, because it has to be a private and a public partnership to problem solving. We have built a system, and the system needs to change in order to accommodate those who need us most. And that's what gives me hope. It gives me hope to hear from Thresholds when they say, can you do this differently? Did you think about this policy? How can we work together? How can we change rules, laws, and policies so that we can make the system better? So I would say, in short, organizations like Thresholds gives me hope for the future, because it is so integrally important to the lives that you touch as well as the systems that we operate within.
Thank you, Grace. Helene, I would now ask you to share with us your thoughts about hope and how we can all continue to move forward for progress and for change.
Yeah, so I would also just say, first of all, I just think what Threshold does is so incredibly important. And I think the focus on our mental health, we so often think about our physical health, but if we're not also thinking about our mental health, we're not whole as human beings. And I still think back on a town hall I had with my staff not too long ago where the issue of mental health came up. And I said, it reminds me of something Congresswoman said, that we think about on a day-to-day level, we're kind of going through the motions and acting as if this is normal. And, I said to my staff, there are days where I just think everything is fine and I'm on top of the world. And then all of a sudden, I stop and think about, oh my God, what planet are we on? And I take a dip. And, the fact that I was willing to say that, in fact, this affects me and I have a privileged life. I can work from home. I don't have a lot of the challenges that people face. And for me, it's a strain sometimes to cope with this very, very unusual situation. And I think we all need to step back and recognize and accept it and acknowledge it. And that's why Threshold gives me hope, because they are thinking about how do we grapple with these issues and how do we face and help people tackle these very, very real issues in a very real way. And I just think that, the leadership of you and Mark together, dynamic duo that you are, along with the staff and the rest of the board, et cetera, to continue to be a beacon for people in the community to recognize our whole selves and be able to think about how do we bring all of that together in an integrated way. That's what gives me hope in the context of this, is that, we have organizations like Threshold that continue to be out there, continue to be on the forefront, talking not only about basic needs, but also how do we shift the policy dialogue so that we're thinking about how do we create longer lasting change. Gives me hope to see an organization like that that continues to move forward, that believes in the power of good, and that makes all of us inspired to do what we do in a better and a more holistic way. So thank you.
Thank you, Helene, and allow me to express my sincerest thanks for just your confidence in my leadership. I also consider Mark and I to be a bit of a dynamic duo, so it's going to be a fun ride. But Congresswoman Underwood, please share with us any words of wisdom that you have for Threshold staff and supporters and donors, and even our board members as we continue to do such very important work in this critical time.
Okay, the work that you do is incredible, but I know that it can be physically draining, emotionally draining. And as I spoke about earlier, you know, it's hard with all that's going on in our country and around the world to be able to find the sense of renewal. And so, you know, my words of wisdom is just to take the time to invest in yourself. And I don't mean just in this like peak millennial self-care kind of way, right? Like, I mean, like for real. And you know, so many members of our community depend on you. And that's such a responsibility. And I know that your staff are so committed to the work and so committed to the mission, but now I feel like the stakes are higher. The need is greater. And so that means that we have to be extra intentional about pouring into ourselves and taking the time to do what we need to do. And so I just want people to know that it's worth it. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to take, you know, all day or all weekend for it to be restorative. And, you know, to focus on that kind of restoration and healing so that we can then continue to pour into others is so important.
Absolutely. And, you know, what resonates with me about what you said, Congresswoman Underwood, is that it is worth it.
Yes.
You know, many of the Threshold staff know me, not from my time serving on the Thresholds board, but many of them know me from my early 20s, fresh out of college when I was a Thresholds employee.
Wow.
And, you know, one of the things that I would say, first and foremost to the staff is, the work is so important. Our work is so important that, you know, some 15, almost 20 years after being a Thresholds employee, I came back to serve on the board of Thresholds. And so one of the things that I would say to the staff, just to encourage you to keep going, is take some time to reflect on the unbelievable impact that you are having on the lives of our members and the people that we serve. I still, to this day, think about those young women at the Mothers Project that I worked so closely with and the impact that I had on their lives, even, you know, in situations where I thought were very small, where I would just take a baby from a mom and just hold the baby to give her 5 minutes just to spend some time alone. To now, as I step into this role as president of the board, to serve you, our staff, but also to serve our donors and our other supporters. I do not take that responsibility lightly, and I hope that you will all join me as I proceed down this journey. I certainly will not be shy about calling on you, but it's because I believe so much in the work that we do and the impact that it has on the lives of our members and even on the lives of the family members of our members. So thank you all for everything that you do. And I look forward to serving you. With that, I would like to thank our panel for joining us this evening. What an amazing conversation among the most incredible group of women leaders that we could have possibly put together for this panel discussion. I know you all lead very busy lives, and just having the opportunity to speak with you and having the opportunity for you to share with the entirety of the Thresholds universe is greatly, greatly appreciated.
Wow, what an amazing conversation by such amazing leaders. And I am feeling more energized than ever and I hope you are too. So that's all, folks. Thanks again for tuning in tonight. Thanks for your love and leadership, your kindness and compassion, your talent and your treasure. Let's keep showing up. Good night, everybody.